It was at my friend's birthday party that Mark decided to bring his mistress. The young woman looked at me, her eyes wide with a kind of lively innocence. I heard from Mark that Mrs. Miller makes excellent American-style coffee, she said, her voice sweet and her smile cloying. May I have the honor of trying it today? Mark glanced over at me, tilting his chin in a silent command. What are you standing there for? His expression seemed to say. Go make the coffee. I stood up from my seat, left the grand banquet hall, and I never went back. The party was being held at a friend's private villa. Originally, Mark had told me he would pick me up from work so we could go to the event together. But late that afternoon, he called and informed me that a driver would be taking me instead. He didn't offer any reason for the change in plans, and I didn't bother to ask. That was the nature of our relationship. He was a man who never felt the need to explain his actions to me. The moment I stepped into the bustling banquet hall, I could feel the subtle shifts in the atmosphere around me. People's gazes lingered a little too long, some filled with curiosity, others with hushed whispers. A few of the looks even seemed tinged with sympathy. It didn't take me long to understand why. Across the room, Mark was chatting amiably with the host, and clinging sweetly to his arm was a beautiful, youthful woman. A sharp, piercing pain shot through my chest, spreading outwards like a cold wave. It was only then that I fully understood why he hadn't come to pick me up himself. He had chosen to bring someone else as his companion for the evening. What I couldn't comprehend was why he had still insisted that I come. Was it truly necessary to humiliate me in this way, in front of all our acquaintances? I stood frozen, rooted to the spot near the entrance. Sensing my arrival, Mark turned his head and looked directly at me. There wasn't a trace of guilt or apology in his eyes. He simply gave me a slight nod and said, with casual indifference, "You're here." The host standing beside him looked incredibly awkward, forcing a smile that was stiff and unnatural. "Sister-in-law, please come in and make yourself at home." The young woman at Mark's side blinked at me as if a thought had just occurred to her. She was undeniably beautiful, with a fresh-faced youthfulness and an energy that was almost palpable. With a voice as light and airy as a spring breeze, she repeated her earlier request. I heard Mrs. Miller's American-style coffee is amazing. Could I try it today? My chest tightened, and I could feel my fingernails digging sharply into the soft flesh of my palms. Mark, looking completely unconcerned by the tension, turned to the host. "Do you have a coffee maker at home?" The host hesitated, his breath quickening. He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand and managed to reply, "Yes, we do. It's in the tea room, just over there." Mark tilted his chin towards me again, his voice carrying across the now quiet room. "What are you standing there for? Go make the coffee." The entire hall fell silent. The lively, cheerful atmosphere vanished in an instant. People lowered their heads, pretending to be absorbed in their drinks or conversations, but I could feel their eyes stealing glances at me from the corners. I met Mark's mocking gaze for a long moment. After a brief, heavy pause, I turned and began to walk toward the edge of the hall. "Hurry up," Mark added from behind me. I didn't respond or slow my pace. I wasn't heading to the tea room. I had been to this villa once before with Mark, so I had a general sense of the layout. I walked straight through the designated tea room, opened the back door, and stepped out into the cool night air of the garden. Following a winding stone path, I found the side gate of the villa, slipped through it, and walked away. The driver who had brought me was long gone. I took out my phone, opened a ride-hailing app, and requested a car. A few moments later, the driver called. He explained that he had been to this exclusive area before and that outside vehicles weren't permitted to enter the main complex. He asked if I could walk to the main gate. I told him I could. This villa complex was enormous, and after walking for a while, my feet began to ache terribly in the high heels I was wearing. I bent down, took them off, and carried them in my hands. Walking barefoot, I could feel the tiny, sharp stones on the pavement poking the soles of my feet, sending small jabs of pain with every step. But strangely, I felt incredibly light. I even started to run. As I moved forward, the manicured scenery flew past me, blurring just like the fragmented memories of my past, growing more and more distant. It felt as though a great weight was slowly being lifted from my shoulders. As if invisible shackles were falling away, my body felt lighter, and so did my heart. By the time I reached the main gate, I was a mess. My hair was disheveled and my feet were dirty, but when I saw the waiting car, I smiled. The headlights were bright and almost harsh, but they seemed to pierce through the darkness that had surrounded me for so many years. In that moment, something inside me cleared. It felt like a dense fog had finally lifted. As soon as I arrived back at the house, my phone rang. It was Mark. "How long does it take to make a single cup of coffee?" he demanded. "I never said I was going to make coffee for you," I answered calmly. "Besides, I'm already home." There was a short pause on the other end of the line, followed by a bitter laugh. "Clara, have you grown bolder?" I couldn't be bothered to say another word. I hung up the phone. Back in the bedroom, I began to pack my things. Mark's villa was huge, with over a dozen rooms spread across 2 floors, but the space that truly belonged to me was just half of a bed and one small section of a wardrobe. Aside from the glamorous dresses he bought for me to wear to parties, I owned very few clothes of my own. It took me just over an hour to pack everything I possessed into 2 suitcases, one large and one small. That night, I left. Mark didn't come back, and he didn't call again. The next day was Sunday, the day I usually got to see our son, Leo. As was my routine, I went downstairs early in the morning and waited in the living room. When a little after 9 o'clock came and went with no sign of my mother-in-law bringing Leo over, a sense of unease began to settle in. I called the old family house. The servant who answered the phone stammered, "The master came by this morning. He said he was taking the young master to the amusement park." I hung up the phone with a bitter smile. Mark was punishing me for my disobedience the day before. He always knew exactly how to control me. Leo was the child I had given birth to after a long and difficult labor. He meant the world to me. I was only allowed to see him once a week, and I treasured every single moment of that day. But if I ever did anything that displeased Mark, even slightly, he would use Leo to get back at me. He would keep him away until I finally gave in and apologized. I took a deep breath, braced myself, and dialed Mark's number. It rang twice before he hung up on me. I called again, but his phone was already turned off. After thinking for a moment, I tried calling Leo's children's smartwatch. I didn't expect it to go through, but to my surprise, it did. "Hello, Mom?" came his small, childish voice. My heart immediately softened. "Leo, when will you be back? Mom is waiting for you at the house." "I don't want to go back. I want to ride the carousel," he said flatly. "But we haven't seen each other in a whole week," I said gently. "Mom misses you so much. Don't you miss Mom?" "No," he replied without a moment's hesitation. I forced a smile I knew he couldn't see. "It's okay. You can play first. Mom will wait for you." "I'm not going back. Dad said he's going to take me camping to watch fireflies tonight." Before I could say anything else, he hung up in a hurry. I sat there in the silent living room for a long time, then quietly carried my suitcases out the door. Originally, I had hoped to see Leo one last time before I left for good, but it seemed like he didn't want to see me at all. Maybe the bond between us as mother and son was never very strong to begin with. Looking around the large, empty house, I realized there was nothing and no one in Mark's world that I truly couldn't part with. Perhaps it was a good thing that I could leave so freely. In the eyes of the outside world, I was Mark Miller's lawfully wedded wife. We had a grand, lavish wedding, complete with an ocean of flowers and resounding applause. But only Mark's family and I knew the real truth. Strictly speaking, we were not legally married. We had never gone to register our marriage. My grandmother had been seriously ill, and she was deeply worried about my future. Since I had not yet graduated from college and had no one else to rely on, she used a favor my grandfather had once done for the Miller family to pressure their eldest son into marrying me. Mark's grandfather, concerned with the family's reputation, reluctantly agreed. Fearing they might go back on their word, my grandmother insisted that we hold the wedding ceremony as soon as I graduated. I tried to reassure her, telling her that I could live on my own and didn't need to marry into the Miller family, but she was terrified of leaving me alone in the world. "Clara, I won't be able to rest in peace unless I know your future is secure," she told me, her conviction firm despite her weakness. I felt I had no choice. The Miller family never truly accepted me. Before the wedding, Mark's mother pulled me aside and made a specific demand. I could only get the marriage certificate after I'd given birth to a child for the family. I thought about it and agreed. At the time, I believed the marriage was just a performance to give my grandmother peace of mind. It didn't matter to me whether we had a certificate or not. Don't tell your grandmother, Mark's mother warned. Her condition is too fragile to handle any stress. I thought it was just a formality. As long as my grandmother was satisfied, that was enough. After she passed away, I figured I could simply leave. But I hadn't expected to fall in love with Mark during the first year of our marriage. He was so good to me in the beginning. I had just graduated and was still looking for a job when he arranged for me to work in the general manager's office of the Miller Group. Every morning, he drove me to the company. Every evening, he waited for me so we could leave together, holding my hand gently in front of all our coworkers. People around us would joke that I must have saved the galaxy in a past life to deserve such a perfect and loving man. When my grandmother was hospitalized, Mark took care of everything. One time, when she was in critical condition and sent to the ICU, he stayed up all night by my side, comforting me without a single complaint. And Mark himself was truly remarkable. In the company, he was confident, decisive, and incredibly capable. Watching him handle complex work with such ease and authority, it was hard not to admire him. It is natural for people to be drawn to strength, and I was no exception. Spending every day with someone like him, I couldn't help but fall for him. When I found out I was pregnant, I was thrilled. I told Mark immediately, and I could tell he was happy too. But in the next moment, he asked me to quit my job and stay at home to focus on the pregnancy. I had always been gentle and accommodating. I didn't know how to argue or resist. Combined with my admiration for him, I subconsciously agreed. By the way, Mark, I asked him one day, when are we going to get the marriage certificate? The baby will need to be registered for household records. He stared at me for a few seconds, his face unreadable. Finally, he replied indifferently, "Let's talk about it after the baby is born." As I watched him walk away, a wave of unease rose in my chest. Something felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. My instincts were right. Throughout my pregnancy, Mark grew more and more distant. In the later months, he often stayed out all night and barely came home. When I went into labor, it was a long and painful ordeal. I spent the entire night in the hospital, enduring everything alone. He showed up just before dawn, moments before the baby was born. Not long after my recovery period ended, my grandmother passed away. I had a strong feeling she had been holding on, waiting to see my baby arrive safely in this world. Once she knew I had given birth and thought my future would be secure, she finally allowed herself to go. Her passing broke my heart. The difficult delivery had also left my body very weak. Mark's mother used that as an excuse to take the baby away from me, saying I was too frail to care for him. I cried and begged Mark to bring our child back, but he responded coldly, telling me to focus on my health instead. At that moment, I was filled with despair. I even considered leaving, but I couldn't bring myself to walk away from my child. I had carried him for 10 months and brought him into this world through so much pain. Sundays became the only thing I looked forward to. Those were the days I could see him. Looking at his tiny face and clear, watery eyes gave me a kind of joy that made all my sadness feel a little more bearable. For the sake of our child, I asked Mark once again if we could register our marriage. He looked at me with contempt, his voice full of scorn. "I thought you had more dignity. Turns out you're just like your grandmother, always trying to climb the social ladder." I clenched my fists, my body trembling with anger. "What do you mean?" Mark's face turned cold. "I'm not someone who can be forced into anything. When your grandmother pushed me to repay her kindness by marrying you, I swore that one day I'd make you regret it." I stared at him in disbelief. "So everything in the past, was it all fake? The care you showed me, the kind words, the looks full of affection. Were they all lies?" He gave a faint, mocking smile. "What do you think?" After leaving Mark's house, I had nowhere to go. Just as my grandmother had feared, I was completely alone in the world. But strangely, I didn't feel scared. For the first time in a long time, I felt a kind of peace. Since I couldn't decide where to go, I stopped trying to think about it. I booked a hotel room and spent my days doing absolutely nothing, watching TV, scrolling on my phone, eating, and sleeping. I no longer had to wake up early to make hand-ground coffee for Mark. I no longer had to brace myself for sudden phone calls from his mother, scolding me for reasons I could never understand. I didn't need to study parenting materials all day, only to find them useless. I could finally just lie in bed and let my mind go blank, free from anxiety. One day, while flipping through TV channels out of boredom, I stumbled upon a travel drama shot in a beautiful southern town called Dali. The scenery was breathtaking, and it immediately captivated me. Without thinking too much, I jumped out of bed and booked a flight there for the next morning. While waiting at the airport, I received a call from the butler at Mark's ancestral home. "Madam, I will be sending the young master over shortly. Please wait at home," he said politely. Only then did I realize it was Sunday. I had spent an entire week at the hotel without even noticing the days pass. Clearly, no one at the ancestral home had realized I was gone either. When I heard the boarding announcement for my flight, I quickly replied, "Don't come, I'm not home." I hung up without offering any further explanation. As soon as I got on the plane, my phone rang again. I answered, and Leo's small, angry voice came through the line. "Bad mom, if you don't want to see me, then I don't want to see you either. Dad said you're not allowed to come home." Before I could respond, he hung up. I sat there, stunned for a moment, then smiled helplessly. Over the past few years, I had forced myself to stay in Mark's house just to be able to see Leo regularly. I had swallowed my pride, endured humiliation, and tried to make peace with Mark. Every time he frowned, I would get scared, afraid he might stop me from seeing my child. Like many mothers who try to fool themselves, I thought that keeping up a facade of family unity would somehow benefit my son. But that idea was foolish. Leo had been raised in the ancestral house. I only saw him once a week, and despite my efforts to please and connect with him, he had slowly drifted away. Our weekly visits had become a chore to him. By the afternoon, he would always be asking to go back. I finally had to admit the truth to myself. Leo didn't seem to need me. He didn't even seem to like me. So I would do what he wanted. I would stop bothering him. Dolly turned out to be even more beautiful than what I had seen on television. I rented a room in a guest house and spent my days taking long walks, soaking in the stunning scenery and enjoying the local food. The air there felt so fresh, as if it could cleanse one's soul. I couldn't help but quiet my thoughts and begin to reflect on my life and the road ahead. For so many years, I had been passive. I accepted my parents' deaths without protest. I followed my grandmother's wishes without question. I remained in a marriage not for love, but for the sake of a child. It suddenly struck me that I had never truly lived for myself. That needed to change. Leaning against the window of the guest house, I looked out at the wide blue sky and my mind wandered to the dreams I once had. I must have had one, right? It was never something big. I was never an ambitious person, never obsessed with wealth or success. I just wanted a simple life, my own life. Back in college, I used to imagine opening a small bookstore. Nothing fancy, just a cozy place where like-minded people could gather, sip coffee, and chat about books. Even if it didn't make much money, it would still be worth it. After all, I wasn't short of money. When my grandmother passed away, she left me a sum of money. According to her last wishes, I sold the house that was under her name. It wasn't a large place, but being in the capital city, it still fetched a good price. That money had been sitting quietly in my bank account ever since. When Mark and I got married, his family gave me 10 million ween as a betrothal gift. There were also several sets of expensive jewelry. After we married, Mark gave me 300,000 yuan every month for household expenses, but I never spent more than 20,000. Leo's education, our home life, everything was taken care of by the butler and the servants. I rarely needed to spend money myself. Most of my expenses were just toys and gifts for Leo. One time, Mark's cousin found out how much money he gave me each month and sneered, "My brother is insulting you with such a small amount. He clearly doesn't care about you. No wonder he tossed you 10 million just to get rid of you." To them, 300,000 a month was an insult. 10 million yuan was a dismissive pittance. Maybe I really wasn't suited to their world. In their circles, buying a handbag or a single visit to a beauty salon could cost hundreds of thousands. Their betrothal gifts and dowries often included entire properties, shops, or large shares in businesses. Compared to that, 10 million seemed laughable. In their eyes, my spending habits were stingy, even vulgar. But I never cared what they thought. I stayed only because of the child, not to be a part of their world. That money might not mean much to them, but to someone like me, who had modest desires and simple habits, it was more than enough. I might never spend it all in my lifetime, and now I had the courage to chase that old dream to open my own bookstore. Before I left Dolly, I called Mark. The phone rang, and just before it would have disconnected automatically, he picked up. "Finally realized you were wrong?" he said, without even waiting for me to speak. "This time, you crossed the line. As punishment, you will not see Leo for 3 months." "Mark," I cut him off, "we never got a marriage certificate." He seemed amused. I could hear the smile in his voice. "You really want to register our marriage now? It's not impossible. But after what you just pulled, it's out of the question. Besides, Jessica is still angry. If you come back and apologize to her, maybe—" "Jessica," I paused. That name again. Was she the woman who had asked me to make coffee for her, his mistress? "Did you hear what I said?" Mark raised his voice slightly. I answered calmly. "Since we never registered our marriage, we don't need to go through any formal divorce procedures either." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was full of fury. "What are you trying to say? Are you breaking up with me? Do you even know what you're talking about?" "Yes," I said. "There's no need for us to see each other again. I will not be returning the 10 million yuan your family gave me. Consider it compensation for giving birth to Leo." "Fine, very good." He let out a cold laugh. "You will never see Leo again." Staring at the screen after he hung up, I gave a weak smile. The child I had carried and delivered with so much pain had turned into a weapon, a tool he used to control and punish me. For the sake of that child, I had compromised again and again, swallowing my pride and doing everything his way. Yet the child remained distant from me, showing no affection, no warmth. That was what gave me the strength to finally walk away. I returned to a small town in the south, the same place where I had once lived as a child. Before my parents passed away, the three of us had lived here together. My mother had grown up in the capital city, but when she wanted to marry and move to this quiet town, my grandmother had objected at first. Later, she was deeply moved by my father's character, so she allowed my mother to marry him. My mother often said that although she grew up in the capital, she never liked the dry air there. She much preferred the small southern town where the warmth and humidity made everything feel gentle and comfortable. I always felt the same way. I must have inherited that part of her. Even though I later moved to the capital and lived there for many years, I never truly adapted to it. Deep down, I still longed for the little town where I was born. So when I started thinking about settling down, this place naturally came to mind. The house where I grew up had already been sold, and I spent quite a long time searching before I finally chose a small home with a yard in the old part of town. There was a room at the front of the yard that faced the street and had once been used as a small shop. I converted it into a bookstore. Behind the yard, the house had several rooms, which I renovated into my own living space. There was a living room, a bedroom, a kitchen, a dining area, and a bathroom. Everything I needed. In the yard, I planted all kinds of flowers and greenery. The newly renovated home turned out just as lovely as I had imagined. On a sunny and mild day, I moved in and held a small, quiet opening ceremony for the bookstore. As I had expected, business was not particularly good. Occasionally, some nearby students would stop by to read, but most of the time the store was very quiet. I didn't mind. The peace allowed me to sit behind the counter and focus on writing. Back in college, writing had been a hobby of mine. Sometimes I even managed to publish short stories in magazines. I had written a medium-length online novel once, which was well received. It earned me some readers and even brought in a decent amount of manuscript fees. My plan back then was to work at a magazine or a publishing house after graduation, writing novels on the side. But after I graduated, I joined Mark's company at his request, married him, had a child, and slowly gave up writing altogether. Now I wanted to pick up that passion again. I wanted to do what I loved and live a life that felt right to me. One day, I was sitting in the bookstore typing when it suddenly began to rain heavily. The raindrops splashed against the window panes, and before long, a large puddle formed at the doorway. A tall, bright-looking young man rode up on a shared bicycle. He quickly parked it, jumped off, and ran over, holding something in his arms that he had taken from the basket. "Boss, can I take shelter here from the rain?" He called out from under the eaves, his head lowered as he wiped the item in his hands. "Of course, come in," I replied with a smile. "No, I'm all wet. I don't want to dirty your floor," he said, glancing up and wiping the rain from his forehead with his sleeve. The moment he looked up, he froze. I saw his face clearly, too, and I couldn't help but think how strikingly handsome he was. He wasn't the usual kind of fair and delicate handsome. Instead, he had tanned skin, defined features, thick eyebrows, and bright, clear eyes. His appearance had a strong, masculine charm, and after a few seconds, he seemed to snap out of it. His expression turned into one of pleasant surprise. "Clara, when did you come back?" "You know me?" I asked, puzzled. I was certain I had never met this confident and energetic young man before. He grinned, revealing a set of perfectly white teeth. "I'm Ethan." "Ethan?" I frowned slightly, trying to recall the name, but still drew a blank. 17 years ago, there was a fire in the downtown mall," he said. "Your father saved me." As he spoke, something in my memory stirred, pulling me back to the past. Back then, I wasn't even 10 years old. My family was happy. My parents loved each other deeply, and they both doted on me. But when I turned 10, everything shattered like a soap bubble. My father was a firefighter. During a major fire in the downtown mall, he and his team rushed in to rescue the people trapped inside. Everyone in the building was saved that day, but my father, along with another firefighter, lost their lives in the blaze. Soon after the funeral, my mother, still in a daze from grief, was hit by a truck while riding an electric bike. She died on the spot. Just like that, I became an orphan. Later, my grandmother came to take me to the capital city. Not long after I moved in with her, my grandfather also passed away. I sank into a deep sense of self-blame. I began to wonder if I was like the characters in television dramas, someone born under an unlucky star who brought misfortune to those around them. First my parents, then my grandfather. Because of that guilt, I became withdrawn, timid, and gloomy. Although my grandmother noticed something was wrong and eventually took me to see a psychologist, the fear and insecurity had already taken deep root in me. Ethan's words brought me back to the present. "If it weren't for saving us, your father would still be," he said softly. "It's all right," I said sincerely. "That was my father's duty." There was a time when I resented him in my heart. Why did he have to save those people? Why did he leave me and my mother behind? My mother died because she couldn't bear the sorrow. Couldn't he have stayed alive for us? But as I grew older, I slowly came to terms with it. I began to understand, and eventually made peace with myself. I began to understand my father more clearly. His personality and his strong sense of responsibility made him throw himself into his work wholeheartedly, every single time. That was also what my mother had fallen in love with in the beginning. He had always been that kind of person. He took pride in his work, and his eyes would light up whenever he talked about it. I no longer blamed him for the way he was. In fact, I should be proud of what he did too. "Oh, by the way, take a look at this. Do you remember it?" Ethan held up a small ceramic flower pot. I took it from him, surprised. "Wait, is this mine?" The moment I saw the flower pot, memories came flooding back. My father had taken me to a pottery workshop when I was a child, and we had made it together. At the bottom of the pot, there were 2 crooked letters spelling out my name, written by my own tiny hand. Clara. I vaguely remembered taking it home and planting a cactus in it. If I hadn't seen it again today, I might have completely forgotten about its existence. "Why do you have this?" I asked, gently rubbing the smooth surface of the pot again and again. Ethan smiled. "Actually, I went to your house once, but by then you had already moved." As he continued, I finally heard the full story. After being rescued from the mall fire by that tall firefighter, he had stayed conscious. Although the man wore a mask and Ethan couldn't see his face clearly, he remembered someone nearby calling him by his last name, Maine. After Ethan recovered, he went to the fire station with his parents to thank the firefighter who had saved him. They brought a silk banner as a token of their immense gratitude. But when they arrived, they learned the heartbreaking news. He had passed away not long after the rescue. His entire family was devastated. Later, they heard that the firefighter's wife had also died in an accident, leaving behind only a 10-year-old daughter. After discussing it, Ethan's parents decided they wanted to adopt the girl. They even decorated a room at home for her, painting it in the soft pink and light yellow colors that little girls usually love. Ethan was excited. He thought he was going to have a little sister, but they were too late. The girl had already been taken away by her grandmother. They never got the chance to even see her. Ethan was heartbroken. He even went to the door of the firefighter's house and cried. It was there, outside the house, that he saw the flower pot sitting in a corner with a small cactus still growing inside. At the bottom were the letters Clara. He knew that must be the name of the little girl, so he picked up the pot and took it home. I had never grown flowers before, he said with a sheepish smile. I took great care of that cactus, but it still died within a week. I laughed. Did you water it every day? How did you know? He laughed too. Because I did the same thing. When I first tried growing cacti, I watered them every day and ended up killing quite a few. The one you found in that pot was the one I had kept alive the longest. Really? How long did it survive? 51 days, I said proudly. We both burst into laughter. And by the way, why did you bring the pot with you today? I asked. He pointed to a small crack near the base. See this? It was broken. My cat knocked it over. I searched for a long time before I found someone who could fix it. I just got it repaired today. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's just a flower pot. If it's broken, it's broken. Is it really worth all that trouble to fix it? He held it gently in his hands, looking at it with affection. Honestly, yes, it is. As time went on, Ethan and I grew closer. After finishing his work for the day, he would rush over to my bookstore and help out, assisting the few customers that came in and cleaning up. Every time he walked in, he would say with a wide smile, "The great writer can focus on creating. Just leave the boring store stuff to me." I was surprised when I found out he was a firefighter. I was saved by a firefighter once, he told me. Ever since then, I dreamed of becoming one myself when I grew up. I'm really lucky I got to fulfill that dream. He spoke with a quiet pride, and the tone of his voice reminded me so much of my father's. Congratulations, I said, truly happy for him. After we became more familiar with each other, Ethan carefully asked me why I had returned to our hometown. He scratched his head, a little embarrassed. Actually, I saw you once before and knew you were married. I went to college in the capital city. After graduation, I came back once for a classmate's wedding. That was when I saw you in a mall. I didn't recognize your face right away. It was only when we passed each other and I heard someone call your name, Clara, that it struck me. That name had stayed in my memory all these years. I turned around and saw you, but I wasn't sure. Later, I asked around and found out you were the daughter of the firefighter who saved me. He looked at me quietly for a moment before continuing. You were about to get married then. It was a grand wedding. I sneaked in and saw you, smiling so sweetly. Clara, what happened? Why did you come back and settle down all alone? His voice was gentle, as if he was afraid of touching an old wound. The concern in his eyes was sincere. It's okay if you don't want to talk about it, he added quickly. I'm divorced, I said calmly. Or more accurately, we separated. Even though I had a child with him, we never actually registered our marriage. I had gotten used to processing my emotions quietly, keeping everything buried deep inside. I thought I had forgotten how to open up to someone, but as I stood in front of someone who genuinely cared about me, I was surprised by how much I wanted to share. I told him everything that had happened to me over the years, speaking slowly, taking my time. My tone was calm, and I even managed to laugh at myself now and then, but Ethan listened silently, tears filling his eyes. I looked at him, slightly amused. Why are you crying? He wiped his face with the back of his hand. They actually had the heart to hurt you like that. Another tear slid down his cheek. Clara, you've been through so much. From his eyes, I saw long-lost emotion. It was the same kind of pain I had once seen in the eyes of my parents and my grandparents. Genuine heartache. He felt sorry for me. After all these years, I finally felt what it was like to be truly cared for. A warmth slowly began to return to my heart. Some feelings between adults do not need to be spoken aloud. I quietly began to accept Ethan's care and attention. Being with him felt natural and right. I didn't resist it, and I felt no discomfort. He paid close attention to the little things I did, gradually learning my habits and preferences, even the ones I had never noticed about myself. Once, we went to a night market and had barbecue. I left the squid skewers untouched, and he noticed. After that day, he never ordered squid again when we were together. Another time, I mentioned offhandedly that I liked my milk tea with only 30% sugar. He remembered. Every time he bought milk tea for me after that, it was always just right. He seemed rough and rugged on the outside, but he was actually incredibly thoughtful. He was like a cup of warm water, quiet and steady. He made everything feel calm and comfortable, and before I knew it, I had become dependent on him. One evening, around the time Ethan usually finished his shift, I waited for him at the bookstore, but he didn't show up. An hour passed, and there was still no sign of him. I began to worry. I couldn't pretend to be calm anymore. So I picked up my phone and called him. No one answered. Panic started to creep in. I quickly checked the local news on my phone and saw that a fire had broken out at a factory in the western suburbs. Without a moment's hesitation, I hailed a taxi and rushed there. When I arrived, the fire had already been put out. I stood outside the cordoned-off building, scanning every face as the firefighters emerged, one after another, but I didn't see Ethan. My heart pounded wildly in my chest. My hands began to shake. The image of my father's back as he left for his final call 17 years ago flashed vividly in my mind. I shook my head, whispering to myself, "No, this cannot happen again." Then suddenly, I saw a familiar figure walking toward me. "Clara, what are you doing here?" At that moment, all my pent-up emotions burst out. I rushed into his arms and cried uncontrollably. "You scared me to death, Ethan. I thought something had happened to you." He gently patted my back, trying to comfort me. There, don't cry. I'm fine, see?" When I finally calmed down, he held my face in his hands and looked me directly in the eyes. "Just now, can I take your reaction as a sign that you care about me a lot?" I didn't want to hide my feelings anymore. I nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I care about you very much. I get worried when I can't see you. My mind runs wild." Ethan smiled, his eyes glowing with warmth. "Clara, let's be together." After everything I had just felt, after the intense rush of fear and relief, I realized that nothing mattered more than the present moment. I no longer wanted to overthink everything. I just wanted to follow my heart and be happy for once. 3 months later, we got our marriage certificate. As we stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Ethan pulled me into a tight hug. "Clara, don't be afraid. You have a home now. I am your family, and I will never leave you." Tears streamed down my cheeks. He had always understood me. He knew about my deep-seated uneasiness, my longing for a place to belong, and the emptiness I had carried in my heart for so long. That evening, when we got home, Ethan started cooking. He prepared steak and poured red wine into 2 glasses. "Is this a bit too fancy?" I asked, raising my eyebrows. "Are you kidding? It's a big day. We just got our marriage certificate." "Of course we have to celebrate properly," he said, sitting down across from me. "My parents are still away on a trip, but I called them. They were thrilled when I told them the news. They said that once they return, they'll help us prepare for the wedding. They promise they won't let you feel wronged," he continued with a warm smile. 2 years ago, with the help of my parents, I saved up and bought a small house. It's the one you visited before. It's not big, but it's fully paid off, so we don't need to worry about a mortgage. I'll start the renovations this month. If you have any ideas or preferences, just tell me. I smiled. "Let's eat first. We can talk about the rest later." "No way," he said seriously. "From today on, we're husband and wife. I need to be honest with you about everything. Then, he pulled a bank card from his pocket and handed it to me. This is my salary card. I quickly shook my head. No, no, if you give it to me, what will you do when you need money? He laughed. You can give me pocket money. I like the idea of being taken care of by you. He insisted on placing the salary card into my hand. As we pushed it back and forth, both of us unwilling to accept it from the other, the doorbell suddenly rang. I quickly got up to open the door. Seeing the father and son standing outside, I froze in place. Mom! Leo hugged my leg and looked up at me with wide, curious eyes. I gently patted his head. Why are you here? Mark didn't answer me. He stepped straight into the house. When he saw Ethan sitting at the dining table, his expression immediately darkened. He turned to me with a sharp look. Who is he? Before I could reply, he glanced around the room and continued, his voice dripping with condescension. After leaving me, you're living in a place like this? You're really putting yourself through hardship. I looked around our house, confused. To me, it was a lovely place. It might not compare to Mark's enormous cold villa, but it was spacious, full of light, warm, and comfortable. This place is nice, I said. Honestly, I like it better than your house. Stop being stubborn, Mark sneered. When you lived with me, you had maids serving you every day. You didn't need to lift a finger. Everything you used and ate was the best of the best. How can you stand this kind of life now? He took a step closer, his voice softening just a little. I understand you were angry when I humiliated you because of another woman last time, but I won't hold it against you anymore. I've already sent Jessica away. I came to pick you up myself. Don't make this harder than it has to be. This is your last chance. I know you've always wanted to get the marriage certificate. I'm willing now. So, in the future... No need, I cut him off firmly. I was tired of seeing that smug, self-satisfied look on his face. I'm not going back, this is my home now. Also, I'm already married, please stop bothering me. Mark's calm, composed expression finally cracked. His pupils trembled slightly. What did you just say? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. Ethan stepped forward, took my hand, and stood steady beside me. Sir, today is a special day for Claire and me. I'll overlook your rude words, but please leave our home now. A flicker of confusion crossed Mark's face. What special day? Ethan replied calmly, We registered our marriage today. We are now a legally married couple. So, Mark, please leave. I will never return to the capital city again. Mark was silent for a long time before he finally spoke. This joke isn't funny. I'm not joking, I said. I'm married. Leo suddenly ran over and clung to my leg, tears welling in his eyes. Mom, do you not want me anymore? I knelt down to his level and tried to speak gently. Leo, even if Mom can't stay by your side all the time, I will always love you. If you miss me, you can video call anytime. And during your school holidays, you can come visit me. Even though Leo had never been close to me and had said many hurtful things, I never blamed him. He was just a 3-year-old child. What could he possibly understand? We had been separated since he was born and only met once a week. There was hardly any time to build a strong bond. It was no surprise that he was so distant. Maybe the connection between us as mother and son was just too shallow. Leo looked at me and nodded slightly, as if he only half understood. The day before our wedding, Mark appeared again. He stood outside the bookstore with a serious expression on his face. I want to talk to you, he said. Ethan, who had been sitting beside me, stood up right away. You two talk. I'll take a walk. Once Ethan was gone, Mark turned back to me. I admit it, you've won, he said. Divorce him, and we'll get the marriage certificate immediately. What are you talking about? I asked, stunned. You married another man just to get back at me, didn't you? You wanted to force me to give in. I gave him a look of disbelief. Are you really that full of yourself? Mark chuckled. Otherwise, how could you be with a man like him? He doesn't compare to me in any way. Clara, you love me. I can see it in your eyes. I stared at him, the man who had made me wait for so long and yet had walked away without a word. So he always knew I loved him. And because he had been forced into the marriage, he couldn't swallow his pride. Instead, he tried to restore his self-esteem by hurting me again and again. Then look into my eyes now. I said softly. Can you still see that love? He was stunned, unable to speak. Mark, I admit I used to love you, I continued. But then I realized you are not someone worth loving. I stayed in the Miller family only because of Leo. If not for him, I would have left a long, long time ago. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of raw pain passed through his eyes. That's impossible. You're just trying to get revenge on me. I know I hurt you over the years. I'm sorry, I really am. But if you come back now, I'll make it up to you. I had feelings for you all along. I laughed. Mark, you are such a coward. Is it really that hard to admit you liked me? That you cared about someone like me? If you look down on me so much, then why did you stay with me in the first place? That's not what I meant, he said, suddenly anxious. Even if you admit you love me now, I will not go with you, I said quietly, because the one I love now is not you. He looked up, shocked. You cannot possibly love him. I don't believe it. You said it yourself. He can't compare to you in many ways, I replied. But he is gentle, kind, patient, and he understands me. He has many strengths. Most importantly, in his eyes, I am the only one who matters. Mark fell silent again. I thought he was finally going to leave, but then he spoke, his voice low and hesitant. What if I change? I can do it. I can be that man too. I will only have eyes for you, and I will never look at another woman again. I shook my head firmly. My feelings for you have completely faded over these past few years. Clara, think about Leo, Mark pleaded. He's our child. Don't you want him to have a complete family? I'll bring him back as soon as I return. We can live together again, the three of us. Towards the end, his voice trembled, but I simply let out a soft laugh. So he could bring Leo back now. All these years, he knew how much I longed to see my child. I had begged him countless times, but he refused every single time. And now, suddenly, he was talking about reuniting as a family. It was laughable. I lifted my head, meeting his eyes with a steady gaze. Ever since Leo was born, you've used him to control me, but not anymore. He will no longer be a tool you can use to threaten me. Because now, I've learned to love myself. From today on, I'll put myself first. No one will ever hurt me again. Mark left in a hurry, clearly shaken. Not long after, Ethan rushed back in. He wrapped his arms around me tightly, his breath fast and uneven. You're hurting me, I said, struggling slightly. He eased his grip but didn't let go. Sorry, Clara, I was just so scared. What are you afraid of? That I'd go back with him? That I'd leave you? I cupped his face gently and gave him a soft smile. Silly. I'm your wife. How could I go with someone else? But you haven't told me that you love me. I placed a finger over his lips. Sure, but what's tomorrow? Our wedding, he said quickly. Exactly. Don't you want to hear my confession at the ceremony? He nodded eagerly. Right! I almost forgot. I still need to go over the wedding schedule with the host. Tomorrow is such an important day. Everything has to go perfectly. Oh no, what if I forget my lines because I'm too nervous? He started pacing around the room, clearly anxious. I won't keep you, I said with a smile. Go prepare. I'll even stay up all night if I have to, he said, already rushing out the door. Then he suddenly turned back, grinning brightly. Clara, wait for me to marry you tomorrow. Mark's perspective. I never expected that Clara would leave me over something as small as a cup of coffee and never come back. At first, I thought she was just being dramatic. Clara had always been gentle and obedient with me. That night, when she walked out of the banquet, I was angry too. To punish her, I took Leo out to play on Sunday and deliberately didn't bring him back to her. I thought she would return soon, but she didn't. Not that day, and not even the following week. Even on the Sunday when she was supposed to see Leo, she stayed away. I started to get annoyed. Every time we had an argument, she was always the one to apologize first. I just wanted to see how long she could keep this up. Then, one day, my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen. My hand moved to answer right away, but I hesitated. I didn't want to seem too eager, so I waited until the very last second before picking up. I wanted to ask her where she had been, how she was doing, but what came out of my mouth was, "Realized your mistake?" And then I added something cruel, telling her she wouldn't be allowed to see Leo for 3 months. I didn't really mean it. I just wanted to scare her a little so she wouldn't think she could walk out on me so easily again. When she calmly said, "We never registered our marriage," the corners of my mouth lifted slightly. So this was about making it official. I had expected this conversation eventually. I still refused, partly to tease her. Maybe I had gotten used to her always giving in. Maybe I thought I was always the one in control. I wanted her to come back, but I stubbornly said she needed to apologize to Jessica. Then she said it. "We're breaking up." Her voice was so cold and clear, my mind went blank. I couldn't believe it. I thought she was just angry, like all the other times. She loved Leo. How could she bear to leave him? I thought, maybe she just needs some time to calm down. Let her go. Once she realizes how hard life is out there, she'll come back. She had lived comfortably with me for years. Surely she wouldn't be able to adjust to a harder life. But she stayed gone for months. There was no word. She didn't even call Leo. That was when the panic started to creep in. I hired someone to track her down. My assistant eventually sent me her address. I rushed over, dragging Leo along with me without even looking at the rest of the report. The moment I saw the news that she was getting married, it felt like a physical punch to my gut. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the screen for a long time, completely frozen. How could she marry someone else? Did she not want me anymore? Did she not want Leo? The day before her wedding, I went to see her. I wanted to try one last time, but she looked at me with such calm eyes and said she no longer loved me. In that moment, I could see the truth. She had really, truly let go. On her wedding day, I stood far away watching. When the microphone was handed to her, she looked at the groom and said, "I love you." Jealousy tore through me like a physical force. She had never said those words to me, not once. Her smile was radiant. Her eyes were full of a happiness that I had never been able to give her. None of that happiness came from me. And that was the hardest part to accept. Sometimes I wonder when I truly fell in love with Clara. Maybe it was that very first time we met and sat down to have a meal together. She smiled so gently, and her eyes were so clear and innocent, like a young deer. She was beautiful in such a quiet, delicate way that it was hard not to be drawn to her. There was something about her that made you want to hold her close and never let go. It took me a long time to realize that marrying Clara had not been entirely forced. With my personality, if I truly didn't want to do something, no one could make me. Deep down, I had already accepted her. I just didn't see it clearly at the time. I was angry. Angry that my marriage was arranged like a business deal. Angry that I was being used to repay a favor. And Clara, being so young and inexperienced in love, was too simple, too easy to fool. After we got married, I went out of my way to be good to her. I was thoughtful, attentive, and made sure to care for her in every possible way. And just as I had expected, it wasn't long before I saw admiration and love growing in her eyes. When she became pregnant, I began to pull away from her. Little by little, I created distance. That was my twisted form of revenge. Ever since I was a child, no one had ever dared to force me into anything. Her grandmother was the first, and since I couldn't fight back against her, I took it out on Clara. After the baby was born, she brought up the idea of getting a marriage certificate again. I responded with harsh, mocking words, insulting her and her grandmother. When my mother took Leo away, I said nothing. At the time, Clara had just gone through a difficult labor. She was weak and exhausted, barely able to care for herself, let alone a child. Then her grandmother passed away, and she seemed to collapse like a paper doll, so thin, so fragile. I thought giving her time to rest and recover would be the right thing to do. But later, I saw her change. She became distant, and her gaze no longer lingered on me the way it used to. That frightened me. I couldn't accept the way she stopped looking at me with love. I wanted to grab her face to force her to see me again. So I made a terrible choice. I started using Leo to control her. I told her that unless she obeyed me, she would not be allowed to see her child. It worked. She quieted down again. Even when she found out I was seeing another woman, she said nothing. But I still wasn't satisfied. She was like a lifeless doll, doing whatever I said without resistance, her face showing no emotion. I wanted to see her react, to feel something, anything, even if it was anger. So I pushed her even further, did more things to provoke her, to break through that silence. Our marriage spiraled into a vicious cycle, and I couldn't stop it. Later, I finally realized how wrong I had been. I regretted letting my mother take Leo away because Clara saw him so little, their bond was weak. He didn't miss her, and that ultimately gave her the strength to leave. If she had raised Leo herself from the beginning, if they had shared a deep mother and son connection, she would never have had the heart to walk away. She would have stayed for him, even if not for me. I also regretted that day I asked her to make coffee for Jessica. It was such a small thing, just a careless, angry remark. But that was the final straw. She walked away from me completely after that, without hesitation, without even looking back. Now I often think about everything I did wrong. I regret not recognizing my own feelings earlier. I regret not treating her better when I had the chance. Why did I always demand that she apologize, that she lower her head? Why did I keep pushing her, forcing her again and again? What foolish, prideful things I have done. I am a man, yet I failed to protect her. I hurt her over and over until she could no longer bear it. In the end, she was full of despair. I think I will spend the rest of my life trapped in this regret. These regrets will eat away at me day and night. They will leave me sleepless and lost with a heart full of sorrow. This is my punishment. One night, I had a dream. In the dream, Clara and I were at our wedding. She was wearing a beautiful white dress, smiling softly at me. I held her hand and we ran off the stage together. "Where are we going?" she asked, laughing. "To get the marriage certificate," I told her. "This time, I promise I will never let go."